All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. First off, I'd like to again thank everybody for attending today. This is exciting. We always love doing these hands-on workshops because if you're new to Power BI or new to modern BI or kind of a new way of visualizing data, there's no better way than to grab a mouse and drag something on the canvas and see it turn into something real. So today's workshop is how to build interactive reports with QuickLaunch and Power BI. So we are going to be covering a few slides just to lay some of the foundation for what we're looking to accomplish today, and then we're going to pass it over to Michelle. She'll be your instructor for today. She's going to make this few hours together extremely fun. And then, again, my name is Adam Krieger. I'm the president and founder. We've also got Ben Harrison, Vice President of Product Management, and David Kettinger, Product Manager, on the line to help. As it says, a hands-on workshop, and unfortunately, we're not in your conference room. Anytime you get stuck, we'll explain a little bit about how you can get caught up, because we've got different steps within the training to be able to go right to what you might have missed from the last few minutes, hands-on, so you don't worry, don't stress out if you missed something that maybe Michelle does on the screen. But we're also here. So there is the panel for GoToWebinar, and we'll post some of the links for some of the login credentials as we get there into some of the chat and questions panel. But feel free to post questions there and we'll respond, or if you get stuck or you can't log in, all of that, we're here to kind of get you over the hurdles. Most of these are typically just at the start, getting everybody signed in correctly, but we have some time. One of the things, or a few of the things that we're hoping that you're able to achieve today, I kind of put a list here. I'm happy to share these slides at the end, but again, if you're new to Power BI or you're already using Power BI, want to understand what it's like as an ad hoc user or report author to build Power BI reports. We hope at the end of the day, you have a much further understanding of that. And hopefully you kind of grasp that we are not starting from scratch. We are going to be doing this session over our sample JD Edwards sales data. But if you're a construction company and you've got job costs, or you've got another area in operations purchasing, or in finance around the general ledger, AP and AR, very similar, just different types of information you might be dragging, but the capabilities are virtually the same. But what we're starting with is our QuickLaunch sales data set, meaning it's already going to have relations amongst where the data is at, all your quantities and sales amounts, gross profit margin, and the relations to things like product groups and products and customers and regions and sales reps and so on. So that's already been put together for you. Normally, if you start with something like Power BI from scratch, you have to basically model all that data, but we're starting, we couldn't do that in a short-term session and still achieve the things we want to today. Also, hopefully you'll identify as you start dragging data into the canvas and not just getting numbers on the page, you'll start seeing how to visualize this data and make more sense of what the information might be telling you. So finding some of those outliers and so on. Hopefully at the end of the day, you feel really good about what you've accomplished. We're hopefully I know this is a long session, and not everybody's probably gonna make it to the end. This is being recorded. And so if you even feel like, yeah, I'd like to do this again, but kind of my own pace, we will have the recording, we'll put it on our website, and we can inform you of that, once it's ready. So the other last thing here is hopefully as you've gone through this workshop today, and just think about not just yourself building the reports, but think about the others. How could, knowing your users and business users and managers, how could they maybe experience and envision their life if this was how they were going to start mining and analyzing data after it would already be built by maybe somebody else? Because not everybody's going to build content like we're going to do today in the workshop. So this is a long, again, we're scheduled for 3 hours. I don't think we're going to take all 3 hours, but we did schedule it for that just in case. And like I said, we want you to post questions that you might have along the way. We will always be watching those, and we can interrupt Michelle and say, hey, Michelle, a couple questions came in, all related to the same thing. let's address those now, or oh, let's stop and go back and can you show that again? So keep us aware of where tweaks we need to make along the way. And at the end, for the remaining people at the end, we will randomly select a winner, gift card winner. We do have people here globally, so depending upon if there's a winner outside of the US, we might have to adjust the format of the gift, but basically a $50 gift or gift card of some sort would be kind of what we're going to target at the end. So that's kind of what hopefully you're looking to achieve. What kind of is happening here is, we're all used to seeing data. This is an example, maybe it's a sales data extract and someone says, I need this every morning. And then you've got 10 different people that go in and build VLOOKUPs and pivot tables and all of that in Excel. And what we're gonna do today, by the time you're done with the workshop, you're gonna take data that might look like that. Obviously, it's coming through a defined data set into a report/dashboard that we can then drill down to some transaction details. So Michelle's going to walk through a lot of, starting with, because we are grabbing a data set, understanding a little bit about that structure and what are these different calculations in there, because it's important to know before you drag something on the canvas, kind of what that is. So that's in essence, what you see visually here is what you're going to build. Everybody should have something that looks exactly like this at the end of today. But again, just as you go through, if there's slight tweaks you want to make as you get more comfortable with the technology, this is really your report. You can kind of do, whatever you choose to do with that. A little bit of definition about the data set. When you build Power BI, and there's lots of different ways that companies start deploying Power BI and modeling data, and we're not going to get into all that on this call because we want to get to the fun, which is let's get started and start building something. But you have all these different data sources. Maybe JD Edwards, maybe it's Viewpoint, Vista, maybe it's NetSuite or Salesforce. All these different sources. Feed those into a data model, and then building some reports from that could be what today we're going to focus on the top, like Power BI. There's also another Power BI capability called paginated reports. We use that specific capability within Microsoft to build income statements and balance sheets. We deliver those as part of our package for QuickLaunch. But you can also connect to the same model that we're doing today. We're going to be in Power BI, but in Excel. So if you are an Excel advocate and want to use Excel a little bit more in a governed way, you could connect to the same exact model that we're showing from Excel and build that. We're not going to do that in today's session, but those are all capabilities that are there. So one of the things that Michelle's going to go through, and we'll probably maybe take our time, as far as if you do have two monitors, it's easy to have the screen of what you're seeing from the workshop on one monitor, and on the other monitor have your own desktop where you're dragging and dropping. So if there's a way to kind of separate those, that is ideal. So you can kind of watch on one and work on the other, work hopefully on our workshop, not do other work if you can avoid it. We're going to go ahead, you're going to log into powerbi.com. So if you already have another work account on powerbi.com, it's going to maybe just bring you right into that. We're going to have to basically go back and sign out. When you sign out, it might take you to a window. You got to hit the backspace on the browser. So if you get stuck on just trying to get signed in, because for this workshop, we need you to sign in with one of these three accounts that we've set up. And so we've got BI, and if you want to just jot this down, we'll copy and paste these into the chat in just a moment. But if your first name starts with the letters A through D, we want you to log in as BIHero1 at biquicklaunch.com. And if your first letter of your first name starts with E through N, then log in as BIHero2 at biquicklaunch.com. And if your first name starts with the letters O through Z, log in as BIHero3 at biquicklaunch.com. Okay, those are the three accounts we set up with the right credentials and rights to this workspace that we're using. And the password is going to be capital L 3TM3S33. So who can crack that code? Well, it's let me see with 3's instead of E's. Whoa, 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 stop. So that's kind of the thing. Well, like I said, we'll put those credentials in, and then you log in, and we'll go and be very careful to navigate to the right location. There's a workspace that's been set up called 2022 Workshop. That's where these reports will live. And then once you get into that correct place, and Michelle's going to walk you through all of this step by step, there will be a list of what are called sales analysis reports. And there should be one that you find with your first name and the first letter of your last name. And if there's any people that have, weren't on the pre-registration list, and we'll go through, just lob a question saying, I don't see my report out there, we can add it very quickly. So within a minute or so, we can get that out there for you. So if you've logged in and you don't see your report once we get there, then like I said, just drop a question there for us, and then we'll get that squared away. So again, we're looking forward. Hope you enjoy the workshop today. I'm going to take myself off camera as we get going, but wanted to introduce you to Michelle Werkmeister. She's always gets top feedback on these workshops, and she's an amazing trainer. So I'm excited to spend the next few hours with Michelle, and hopefully you enjoy this time together as well. So Michelle, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Adam. I think I have it. So hopefully everybody can see my screen as we're going.
Yep, I see it.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody, for coming today. I'm excited to walk you guys through building maybe your first Power BI report for many of you, and showing you just a little bit about how Power BI works with the QuickLaunch solution. So the very first thing we need to do is get logged in. So as Adam mentioned, we are going to just use a browser, either Chrome, Edge, one of those two. If you open your browser and just log in, I usually just go to powerbi.com to get me logged in and hit enter, and it will bring you to the sign-in screen. Once you get to the sign-in screen, you're going to just go to the top right corner for sign in. When you click that, it will prompt you to enter your email address. That is where you're going to enter that BI hero, either 1, 2, or 3, at biquicklaunch.com. And then it will prompt you for the password, which is the let me see with 3's instead of E's. So if everyone would like to go ahead and get logged in, if when you try to log in, it automatically takes you in and it's taking you in with your organization's login and not the BI QuickLaunch, what you're going to want to do is just come up here in the top right corner and click on your profile. I have a little gray person up there, and choose the option to sign out. And it'll say you're signed out. Then you just hit the back arrow one time and then use another account. And here I could go ahead and put in that BI Hero 3 at biquicklaunch.com. And then let me see. And it's going to take us in. Excellent. Again, if anybody has trouble logging in, please just put in a quick message in the chat box. You can either chat or do the question, and Ben or Adam or David could get you set up there. So once we're logged in, this is what they call the Power BI service. So this is really where our end users would come, or our consumer users would come to access the content and navigate through. They're going to access everything through what they call an app. And in the app, they would just come in, they would click on what they call this little card here, and they would see their reports. So here I've got JDE Analytics is my report or my app, and I've got several reports in there. I've got some finance reports, I've got some operations reports, and I've got some examples, and we could click through here. This is what it would look like again for our end user. As a report designer, and what we're looking at in this very quick workshop is how do we create this content for our end users? Specifically, how do we create a report that the user can then, click on and navigate through and get the information that they need to do their job? What we're going to create here is something that looks like this, where we have some slicers in the top, which are just really easy to use filter criteria for our consumers. They're right there on the page, things they'll change every time they run the report, such as period, years, business units, companies. We're going to create some visualizations that help to represent the data in a picture format. So instead of always looking at the data as rows and columns of data in a spreadsheet, we want to look at it in the pictures. It's easier to analyze or process. It doesn't necessarily, we don't care about the specific number at this point. When we're talking about Power BI and visualizations, we're looking to get directionally correct. We're looking for those comparisons. We're looking for where a trend falls off. And we can really find those quickly in pictures. We can then drill to or navigate to the details. So this is what we want to get to. How do we create that? That's what we're going to do in class. I'm just going to click on this button down here at the bottom on the left-hand corner and go back. And it takes me back to my main screen. In order to build this, we are going to create content in what we call a workspace. So typically all of our development is done using the Power BI desktop application. For this workshop, and because we need everybody to have access to the same data, we are doing development in the Power BI service. This is not a best practice and not what we would recommend in a go forward capacity, but definitely just a workaround that we're using here in the class. So what we're going to do is go down to Workspaces and just click on that option. And I'm in that menu bar over on the left-hand side. And you're going to see you have one workspace available to you called 2022 Workshop. Go ahead and just click on that workspace. And in here, we've already created a report for everybody. So we are going to start with kind of this pre-built report. Please navigate down and find your report. It's just going to be the sales analysis report with your name on it. So here's mine, Michelle W. And to launch this report, I'm just going to go ahead and click on the link. This is exactly what we were seeing in the app. This is just where we're looking at it from the workspace. So an app is built over a workspace, just so we get that combination or that connection. And what happens is in our workspace, we have a bunch of different reports and we group those together and publish it as an app for the user. So right now, the way we're using a workspace, we have 20 copies of the same report that we're all going to work with to build. They all have a unique name because they have our names appended to them. So in here, the sales analysis report, this is just a sneak peek of what we're going to build during our session today. So in here, again, you'll see very similar to what we saw when I was in that app. We have a title for the report. We have what they call slicers across the top. These slicers are a little different than what we just saw in the sample app. These are what they call buttons. So if I want to change my period, I just click on period 6, or I just change it to 2018 by clicking on that button. And that's how I can change what my filter criteria is, as opposed to having a drop-down list of values. So we have these slicers. Then we have our visualizations. We have a waterfall chart, a stacked bar chart, what they call a scatter chart, and then a trend chart. We also have a couple KPIs. The KPIs are just a way to really highlight or call out some information and do it in comparison with other numbers. So that is where we're going to go. Once we have our report created, we want our users to be able to really interact with the data. One of the most powerful things about these Power BI reports is that we want users to interact. We don't want these to be static reports that you just have sent to your email box. You open every morning, you look at it, and you kind of move on with your day. It's kind of boring. I don't know. It feels like black coffee to me. Just blah. We want these to be fun. We want users to log in here. We want them to be able to look, and if they see something that doesn't make sense, they can hover over it. They can see what the number is. They can see additional information. This is what they call a tooltip. They can interact with the data by clicking on it, and it does what they call cross-filtering. So it says, okay, for TVs and theaters in the central region, now it shows me who were my salespeople that were selling in there. It shows me, you know, kind of the scatter chart, but it's just focused on this particular product group and in that specific region. And then I can see the trends that are going along with it. Maybe I want to switch to the Northeast region, but still stay within TV and theater. You know, now I see different sales reps. So, because I'm in a different region. So I have that ability to look at or really focus in on my data. I also have the ability here, instead of cross-filtering, to do what they call a drill down. This takes me to the next level of detail. So again, I'm on that TV and home theater. I click drill down. I'm looking at this by gross product and region now. Now when I drill down, I'm just looking at it by product. So, or by my product group with the region. And if I right click, there's no other level there. Here, if I look at it on a salesperson and I drill down, I can actually see the different customers for that salesperson. So I'm looking just at my specific sales rep, but I'm looking at all of their customers. Which customers have more sales this year, which ones have less, right? And I can drill back up and go back up to that high level of the sales rep. So we want the users to be in here playing with the data. We try to avoid just sending them copies of reports. So how do we do all of this? That's what we're going to spend about the next hour and a half doing. We are going to build out this report. So building Power BI reports is really fun and it's fast. So let's go ahead and do that. If everyone
Michelle,
can go ahead. Yes.
Don't want to interrupt, but this normally is where we just want to make sure everybody who's online is able to get in. So again, if you are in already, great. If not, again, please go ahead and post some questions so we can help anybody that's still trying to get connected. So you can continue on, and I'll let you know, Michelle, if we need to pause and
Perfect.
read it. But yeah, so if anybody's not in to Power BI to a screen, kind of like where Michelle is showing, please lob a question. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Adam. Yeah, silence makes Adam nervous. So excellent. Okay, here we're going to go. We're going to start. And
Actually,
what we want to
it's snoring that makes me more nervous than silence when I hear that on the line, but yes.
Oh, I understand. So yeah, you guys, and even if you guys just see something that you really like, throw that in the question or throw that in the little chat panel. Just be like, that's awesome, you know, or tell me more. Let us know. Give us some feedback as we go. So we're gonna start here. Oh, one other thing I wanted to show. We also have a details page. So here I've got the analysis page, which is kind of the summary. I also have details. This is kind of the transactional report. This is probably what you're used to seeing today. I refer to these as kind of traditional reports, rows and columns of data. The neat thing about these reports is if I'm looking at some data here, I can right click and do what they call a drill through. This actually takes me from one page of the report over to the other page. So now I can go from my picture or that summary view and I can go actually see what are the transactions that make up that information. It's going to pass over the filter criteria. It's passing over the year and the period. It's passing over things like the channel, the product group. You can see here my filters, and it really focuses me in. So I can see what are those individual transactions that are making up the number that I see here on the summary report. So all of this, again, we're going to build here in class today, and we are going to start right here on page L1. So if you go to L1, this is our lesson 1 is what we call it. This is where we create our visual. The first thing we want to do is just start building a report. In order to do this in the Power BI service, we need to get into edit mode. Currently, we're in kind of a run mode. So to get into edit mode, you just come on the menu on the top of your screen here, right in the middle of the page, just happens to be where it lays out, and click the word edit. This switches us into edit mode. A couple things will change on your screen. The pages will go from being a column on the left-hand side to being tabs across the bottom of the screen. This is how we're going to navigate around. And over on the right-hand side of the screen now, you're going to see what they call panes. So there's 3 default panes. We have the filters pane to help limit our data. We have a visualizations pane, and we have a fields pane. So this is going to be how we create content. Again, I am on the L1 page, which is a blank canvas. This is how we'd come in and start creating content. When we go to create content, the very first thing we have to do is define what is going to be our data set or our perspective that we want to build the data over. So we are building data over our sales perspective, or a modified version of the sales perspective. And so we are looking at JD Edwards data. And here in the fields pane, you can see our tables that we're looking at. You'll notice the main difference, the big difference here. These tables are named more what we would consider to be user-friendly names. So we're seeing something like branch instead of the F0006. We are seeing, customer instead of the F0401, the customer master. We're seeing the sales table. It's just called sales instead of the 4211 or the 42119. So hopefully for users, this helps them. It's easier to navigate through. If I want to pull in data, sales data, I would go to the sales table. I don't have to know that cryptic name. To expand the table, we just click on the arrow and it will expand out. And then we see what we call the dimensions in here. So if I'm going to widen my column because I don't like things to cut off, and I'm just using drag and drop to do that. Nothing fancy. And I have each of the field names down, the different fields from the table. So here's the document number, or I have the document type. So these are dimensions. They're just different ways we're going to slice and dice the data, the sales data. What are we slicing and dicing? We're doing that to amounts, or what they call measures here. The measures are all up in these subfolders at the top. So if I want to do anything with my quantity ordered, I would just expand this subfolder and I'd see all my measures here. So I've got a quantity ordered. So if I want to know what was ordered, how many items were ordered, I could come down here and I could find in my sales table, I'm going to look at it by, let's go with order number. Actually, we'll go with amounts. Makes more sense than quantities. So I'm going to go with my order number, and then I'm going to navigate up here on the top, and I'm going to go under the sales amount and just click the box here called sales amount. So now I have a table that shows each of my orders and the sales amount. The table defaults in what they call the canvas part of the canvas area of the report. As I checked the box, it populated those fields into our fields well in the visualizations pane. So I'm using a lot of new terminology, but hopefully you guys can kind of see my screen and you're able to follow along. So we can create that table. If we want to see this data broken out, we just continue to add more dimension fields. So if I scroll down, I'm just going to shrink up my sales amount. And I can scroll down and I can say, okay, I want to break this up now. I've got my order number, but I want to see it by line number also. I add line number to the table. I just check that box and it drops the field here in the fields well in the visualizations pane. And now you can see it over here on the canvas. To rearrange my columns, I just simply do a drag and drop in the fields well. So I've got order number, line number. If we wanted to see which order had the highest sales amount or which line on an order had the highest sales amount, all we have to do is come here in our table, click on the column heading, and it will sort by that column or that field, that column, those values. If I wanted it in sequential order by order number, I just click on the order number column. If you click twice, it will reverse the sort order. So I can go ascending or descending just by clicking on the column heading. So this is a simple table visual. Perfect. We can also add values to this table or dimensions to this table from other tables. So we started with the sales, but let's go look at some information by customer. So in your fields pane, go ahead and navigate up to the customer table and just expand that. And let's go ahead and add the customer name field. Again, you can either click the box or you can use a drag and drop. I'm going to take customer name and add it as the very first field in my column. And then we're going to add channel. It's up there at the very top. They're in alphabetical order, but sometimes I'm not very good at this. And then we'll add sales rep. And again, I'm using the drag and drop just so I can have them in this order that I'm telling you, but you could just check the boxes and rearrange the columns. So from the customer table, we've added channel, customer name, and sales rep. Once we're done adding the fields from this table, I like to just collapse it up just so that I can see my item or my information a little better. Now, if I want some information about what item they purchased, I'm going to go down here to the item branch table and expand that. And I'm going to add a few fields from here. So what I want to know from the item branch is I want to know what was the item. So I'm going to add the item and description. And you'll notice every time we add this, my table gets a little bit bigger. I want to know the product group. That's just down here a little bit lower. The product subgroup right underneath it. And then the actual product. Now you'll notice our table is cut off. We can easily resize this table just by clicking on those dark indicators to resize the table. So we have a choice. I've got, product group, product subgroup, and product. This is broken down by the item and the item description. So we've got a lot of information here depending on what we're trying to look at. And then we have our information from the sales table where we're looking at things like the order number. If we want to add additional information, let's go ahead and navigate down to the sales table. And we have the order number. Let's go ahead and add a couple other things like the order date, the order type, and then we have our line number and our sales amount. Now we have some details. All we're going to do here is we have that L1. If we want to rename this, I'm just going to rename this by doing a right click on the tab and go to rename. And I'm just going to call this transactions. Perfect. You can move your tab if you like. I just can, just kind of, I think just dragging here. So I can drag it down if I want to move it towards the end and rearrange the pages of my report. So we have a single report. The report's called Sales Analysis Report with your name. It has 13 pages to the report. Each page is going to be a different piece of information or a different thing that we're looking at. If we want to add a new page, it's as simple. And what we'll do next is just click on the plus, the little yellow plus mark, and that's a new page. And that gives us page 1. And we can just go ahead and drag that page 1 back over and put it where L1 used to sit. Excellent. Hopefully everybody's doing well and you were successful in creating a new page called Transactions. It is a simple single visual, which is our table visual, and it's just pulling in different information. Let's go back now to that blank canvas. I want to start again here, but this time what I want to do on this canvas is I want to start by looking again at the sales amount. So let's navigate in our fields, and this time the first item we're going to add is the sales amount field. So just click on sales amount. The last time we built a report, because the first item we added was a dimension field, I think we added order number first, it gave us a default visual type of a table. This time, because we added an amount field first, the default visual type is going to be this column chart. So if I want to see my sales amount broken across by customer, but I want to see it in a visual, all we do is we added the sales amount, then we navigate up to the customer table, just like we did before, And I'm going to find that customer name, and I'm just going to add this. So the customer name is going to be the x-axis, sales amount is the y-axis, and now we have a visual that looks like the table. Again, I like to resize my visual just so I can see more data. Feel free to do that yourself. We are looking at a column chart. It's the default, but we can change this around however we like. All we have to do to change the visual or the way it looks is in the visualizations pane, we just click on a different picture. So right now it's defaulted to this cluster column chart. If we go one visual to the left, we can change this to a cluster bar chart. And it looks very similar to a column, it just flips it on its side. If I want to see this as a donut chart, I just come down here and I click on the donut icon. A donut is the same thing as a pie, it just has the middle cut out. So you have a pie chart or a donut chart, either one of those. So go ahead and let's, I've got this set now as a donut chart. There's a couple things we can do. We have labels on the donut chart here. There's lots of different ways we can format this. If we go in the visualizations pane, we've been looking at how to define a visual where we select the picture, what type of visual do we want, then we define which fields, which measures do we want, which dimensions do we want. But we also have in here a section for formatting the visual. So that's a little paintbrush. If you click on the little paintbrush, you'll notice in here we've got a legend. Do we want to see the legend on or off? And if I go to my data labels here, it's what do I want to see for the label and where do I want it positioned? So I have category, but I have the ability to add other things. And again, this is just for the pie chart. Every visual is going to have different options here in the formatting. Okay, so it's if you go in here and you're like, why don't I see this? It's probably just because you're on a different type of visual. Every visual, it will change a little bit. I like to go down here and say show all details, and then I can see Easy Home, $1 million, and that is 4.76% of the total pie or of the total donut. Newegg, roughly $2 million, 15% of the pie, right? And I've got all these little guys. As you hover over, your tooltip pops up and gives you more information, but you also see that same information right here in the label. And that is just controlled right here under the formatting of the visual. Perfect. So right now, if we go back over to where we defined the visual, my visual is showing me by customer name, right? What were their sales? How much, and then what percentage of the pie? But if I want to be able to look at this and not only look at it by customer, but look at it by what products they bought, what I want to do is add the product group. So what we're going to do is navigate over here in your fields well down to where the product group was. That is located in the item branch table. Find product group, and I'm just going to drag and drop that right here underneath customer name in the legend field well. And now what this does is it creates that drill down that we saw in our very first sample. So if you're looking at your visual and you right click on Newegg and take the option to drill down, it's going to take that 2 million and it's going to break it across by the different product groups. Maybe I've got to let it think. So here I can see, trying to think, I think I went down one whenever I did my drill down, but here you can see it broken out by what were those groups, or what for that customer, how did their sales break across in the product group? Keeps me in the same visual, same picture, but I just see it at the next level of detail. To go back up and see it by customer name again, I just go ahead and I can right click and choose drill up, or I can use the arrows at the top of the visual. So I was on Easy Home. So it did take just a moment to process that as it went down. I can create basically kind of a hierarchy of what is the information people want to see. Ask yourself as you build visuals, what kind of questions would people ask when they look at this data? So, I know Adam, if I told him that, our customer Best Buy bought $1 million worth of stuff, the first thing Adam's going to ask me is, well, what kind of products are they buying, right? And then once I told him that they're buying a lot of TVs, he's going to say, well, which TVs? Right? So then I might go in here and go from product group, I might actually go add the item in the description so we could see what are the specific items that they're adding. So just anticipate who's your user, what types of questions do they ask? And that's going to help you to know which fields do you want to put in here and what order do you want to see those in. Excellent. So now we can see, who's been purchasing products, what have they been purchasing, right? And we can navigate down and up. Now, if we want to, we can change this visual if we'd like, if we feel like this isn't really, showing us the data the way we want to see it, we can change that back. So what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and change this. Well, let me see where I want to go. Actually, I want to just add more information here. So whenever I hover, I see that they have a sales amount, but I want to know what's the gross profit and the gross profit percent. Those items are, the measures are down in the sales table. So we're going to navigate to the sales table. And in the sales table, I've got a folder called gross profit. So go ahead and expand gross profit. And what we're going to do is take the gross profit and gross profit percent and add these as tooltips. So a tooltip is right down here. That just means whenever they hover and that black box appears, we're going to see that gross profit and the gross profit percent. I'm going to just drag and drop it into tooltips. And then down here, I see gross profit percent. I'm going to drag that in there. And now immediately, as I hover over my value, I can see that my tooltip now is showing that information. Now, our users really like this, but they say, I still need to see that table of data. I want to see it broken out. All the user would have to do on the visual is click on this ellipsis and go to show as table. It's going to change the visual. So I see the picture at the top, and then I see that information broken down here in a table format. So they can still get to those details that they need to see, but they still have that picture as well. Looking at this table, it's hard to see that Newegg takes up 15%, but the picture makes it very clear how much of our business is controlled by one customer. To get back to the report, I just simply click in the top left-hand corner, back to report, and it brings me back to my original page. So this is how a user is going to interact with this visual. They can just see that data, jump over. Now, what if you need to make that more permanent? The user says, your picture is nice, but I have to have my table. I hate to hear that, but I know it happens to you guys. All we need to do is change this visualization type to a table. And that's as simple as putting focus on your visual, make sure you have those dark indicators around it, going over here to your visualizations pane and clicking on the table icon. In your icon list, it's the picture that looks kind of like a spreadsheet. If you hover over the top, it's going to call it a table. Or when you hover over it, it'll pop up and call it a table. Just click on that, and now we can create that table. So you will see now we have those just rows and columns of data. Now, what if I want to make this so I just see one row of data per customer? All we need to do is remove some of our details. Remember I said the more dimensions you see here, the more rows of data you're going to have, the more detailed it's going to be. The fewer dimensions you have, the more consolidated or summarized that data will be. So to just see one row per customer, all we need to do is remove the product group and the item and description from the fields well. To remove a column, we're just going to come over here and click on the X next to the column in that fields well. So I'm just going to remove the item and I'm going to remove the product group. And now I have one row per customer. Let's continue. Let's remove that the gross profit and the gross profit percent just by clicking on the X there for gross profit and the X for gross profit percent. Now we see one line per customer that shows their sales amount. We can resize this visual so it doesn't take up quite as much space on our screen just by shrinking. And then what we'd want to do is, it's always a good practice to just hit that save button. The save is going to save your report just like you have it. Save any changes that you've made. And you'll notice it just saves right over the existing report. You don't get, there's no chicken button. Are you sure? It just saves right over with your newest thing. So that save button is kind of in the top right side on that menu bar. Perfect. We have just created our first visual, and it has ended up that it's a table with one line per customer showing their sales amount. Let's go ahead across the bottom, just click on L2, and this puts all of us in the same spot. So if you got lost in the previous exercise, don't worry. Here we're at in the L2 exercise. Or you could continue building from the page that we were just on. But next, what we want to do is this, just make sure we all have the same starting point. We are going to make this so our users, because we're looking at sales amount, and I say, well, this is great, but how do I know what the sales amount represents? Right now, there's no definition around our time element. We are just looking at sales amounts for the customer since kind of the beginning of time, whatever we have in the system. So we want to actually look at this and see that information and know for what time period I'm looking. I want to see it for a specific month or quarter or year. So what we want to do here is we're going to add in a few other dimensions. This is just a standard measure. If we go to our sales table and navigate down to the sales amount, you'll notice that we have a standard measure. We also have what they call time-based measures. So these are built in the QuickLaunch solution. They don't come from JD Edwards. Sales amount comes from JD Edwards. It's the AMT field. We actually build these measures and put some coding around it to say, my user is going to choose a month and I want it to show me just the total for that month. And that's the MTD. To add this measure, first focus on the visual. So make sure to click anywhere in that visual and get that dark indicator. Number one step, most important. Now let's add the sales amount month to date measure to our visual. All we're going to do is click on that MTD and it will add it to the table. We can do the same thing for the quarter to date and the year to date. Now we can see that this is breaking it down, but we're like, what is that doing? There is logic in there that says what we need to do if nothing's been defined, go out and show me kind of the greatest value. So if the highest year that we have in this system is 2022, that's what we're seeing in the year to date number. What's the highest quarter? Well, right now it would be quarter 2. The month would be July. So it's looking at what's the data that we have out there, and that's what it defaults in here. If we don't have anything else defined in there, it looks at the calendar that's been set up and takes the highest values, which is okay, but our users want the ability to change up what they're looking at. So what we want to do is we want to actually add what they call slicers to this report so the user can change up the values. So to add the slicer, we could just go here in our L3. Again, if you got lost as we were pulling in values, just click on L3. We're all starting at the same point. We're going to add slicers so the user can see it. You're welcome to stay working on that L2. Okay. Just as soon as you get lost, you can just jump with me to the next tab, and we can start from the same place. But just know, if you want to keep building from L2, feel free. If you got lost, click on L3. From here, let's add slicers. That's our next exercise. The slicers are dynamic. It's our way to add to be able to change the values or choose which one we want. The first slicer that we want to add is we want to add a slicer for year. So what we need to do is click anywhere in the canvas of our page. The canvas is the white space. Remember, if I click on the visual, it puts those dark indicators around. That focuses the visual. If I add something now, it adds it to the visual. If I click outside, I can create a new visual. So let's do that. Then what we want to do is add the slicer. There's a couple different ways to do it. What I want to do is go find the year field. So I'm going to navigate up to the calendar table. This is actually a QuickLaunch table. It's not from JD Edwards. And then in calendar, if I open up fiscal, we'll see we have lots of different ways to slice and dice dates. So I'm going to take the year field, and I'm just going to actually, this one will be a little bit different. I'm just going to drag and drop that over on my canvas. And you'll see it gives me a default of years. So I have 3 years that are currently set up in this data, this demo data for me, 2017, 18, and 19. And this is just a table. If we want to change the visualization type to a slicer, all we're going to do is go in our visualizations pane, and it's the icon right next to the table icon. So if you hover over it, it says slicer. It's got a little funnel on it. And this is going to help our filter criteria for year. So this is a slicer for year. All my user has to do, and I'm just resizing this, I don't want it so big. All the user has to do is check the box. Now we're looking at 2019. If I click 2018, you'll notice our values change up above. This slicer is what they call a, it's our list of values. If you click on the little down arrow inside the slicer, I could make it a drop-down list. So here I can see it, the user has to click on it. It takes up just one row of space as opposed to having all the values listed. With 3 years, really it doesn't matter if we do a drop-down list, a list or a drop-down option. But if I have something with a lot of values like business unit or item number, item description, the drop-down list is really nice because those lists will constantly change. I might have 100 values in there today, but there might be 150 tomorrow. It's going to take up the same amount of space on the report regardless. So you want to just think as we create these slicers, how often do they change? How many values do we have? If it's a set number, having them just here as a list is nice. The other option that we have, and so that's the default for the slicer, but I want this to look like that sample report. I want these to be buttons. I think buttons are just cuter. They're easier to use. So we're going to focus on our visual. I'm going to come here in the visualizations pane and go to the formatting section. And this time under the general option. So you have 2 options. It says visual and then general. Go to general and go to property. No, it's under visual, sorry. Slicer settings. Knew I was going to mess that up. So formatting, under visual, slicer settings, just expand that section. And you're going to change the orientation from vertical to horizontal. This will turn these options from being checkboxes into buttons. So there's smart sizing buttons. If you resize your visual, the buttons will change sizes with it. But they work the same way. The user just clicks on it and it changes what they're looking at. Excellent. Let's create another slicer, but this time what I want to do is create a slicer for the period. So the user can choose which period they want. Again, we could walk through all the steps we just did, or we can copy the existing slicer. That way I don't have to redefine everything. To copy an element, all I do is focus on it. I'm going to use my keyboard and I'm going to do a Control-C for copy, and then a Control-V as in Victor to paste. And you'll notice it pastes kind of right on top of the previous slicer. To move it, all we're going to do is drag it. I find the easiest way is to click on the little ellipsis, the 3 dots, and drag it from there. Now you have year, it shows 2019 twice. That's because it's doing what we call that cross filtering. Don't worry about it. It's going to fix with our next step. So now you should have 2 slicers, both saying year. focus on one of the slicers. Just click on it. And then we're going to go back over to the definition, and you'll see in the visualizations pane under the fields, well, it says year. We're going to change that to be our period number. So in order to do that, I just click on the X to remove year, and I'm going to add period number by checking that box. And now I see my different periods. Now, I think period number is great if I'm doing financial reporting, but this is more of an operations report or a sales report. So I might want to use the period description short instead. Again, I could change out that period number. You can just watch mine right now as I do it. So I could have the words instead of the numbers. It's up to you on which one you think is easier for your users or better. But I'm going to stick with period. I'm going to leave mine at period num so it matches yours. But there's my 12 periods. Excellent. You'll notice that we have one column here called selected. What the selected value does is, and it's blank, this one actually gives my user the ability to choose which value they want to see. So if you think about this, if we were creating pie charts or column charts, if I create one for month to date and I give that to the user, the first thing they're going to do is go, can you show that to me in year to date? And then I have to go recreate the entire page with year to date. What we can do is give them a value where they get to choose which one they want to see. So that is the selected value. In order for this to work, we actually have to give them another slicer where they choose which value they want to see. So what we're going to do is take our slicer for year, and I'm just going to do a copy and a paste on that again, and drag it to the bottom. And this time we're going to create a slicer for the selected value. So just like we did before where we replaced year with the period number, this time we're going to change it to be either month to date, quarter to date, or year to date. So what we do is in the visualizations pane where it says year, go ahead and just remove that. In your fields pane, navigate down to the table called selected time calc filter. And there's two items in this table. Yes, Adam.
Michelle, yeah, their question came up. Will the buttons automatically update if you add data in for, say, 2020?
That is a great question. It depends on how we've defined this or if we've limited. So when we create these visualizations, if I don't have any parameters on it and I just had a new value come up, it would automatically show, yes. If I put some limitations on this so that that slicer only shows 3 years, we would have to see how we put that on there. So I could show you that, so I can make it dynamic so that it always shows me like the current year and the previous 2 years. And it would just automatically roll every year. Or we could hard code it to show those years, or we could just say, show me any options that are in the database. So the answer is, it depends. How's that? What do you want it to do? Because we can make it do whatever. So yeah.
I think that's right. One thing just to point out, because you have it up on the filters, see how you got the year 2017, 2018, 2019. We were filtering on the year for this report. But you could do, let's say, last 3 years or make it relative, so that way it's always going to bring back. So if you're in 2022, it's going to have, it working dynamically from that, unless you specifically filter down the slicer like you just mentioned, right? So
yeah.
If you filter down the report as a whole or all pages or one page or the visual itself, it will limit it.
Yeah, great, thank you. Yeah, because we're looking at demo data, we did limit that data to 17, 18, and 19. In the real world, you guys would probably want to make this more dynamic, so it was just like the last 3 years or the last 5 years. That way you don't have to update that report every year. So, but we do have that built in, and just because Adam brought it up, right here under filters. So I'm in the calendar table. I could, instead of filtering on specific years, I could say, show me the last 3 years or the last 5 years, the last 3 periods. So we do have lots of different ways to slice and dice data. Okay, so this new slicer, back to our, what is going to show in that selected value. In selected time calc filter, take selected time calc filter ABBR and add that to the fields well. And now the user could choose it. If you just went with filter, again, it just writes out the whole words. I like the abbreviated version, I like things shorter, and they could choose. So if they want to see month to date, they just hit month to date. So now this column on my report matches the month to date. If I change the slicer to quarter to date, now it matches quarter to date. So I could create a single visual and the user can choose in that visual, are they looking at it for month to date, quarter to date, or year to date? So it just makes the report more dynamic, means I don't have to create a whole nother report so that the user can see that data. Perfect. Now what we want to do is we want to make this look a little bit more like data that the user might want to see. So instead of just having that month to date, quarter to date, year to date on here, I don't need those anymore. Really, I've got that selected value and that's going to replace everything. So let's go ahead and remove everything from our table except for the sales amount selected. So I'm going to leave customer name and sales amount selected. To remove those fields, remember, focus on the table and then just click the little X to remove those items. And let's add some information. What's more realistic? If I'm showing you my sales amount for our customers, more than likely what you're going to want to see is, well, what did they buy last year? Let's compare it to last year. So let's add the prior year information to this table. So under sales, go ahead and expand that table. Navigate down to sales amount, and you'll see where we chose sales amount selected. Right below it is sales amount selected PY. PY stands for prior year. So just go ahead and check that box. If you keep looking down, you'll see sales amount versus prior year. That's going to be your variance. And because we know we might have some accountants on the call, let's throw in that variance percent as well. Okay. Anytime I have accountants, if they see two numbers, they have to know the difference, and percentage just makes them happy. So here, I can make everybody happy with my data. Again, users can just choose if I want to see period 9. I click on that slicer for 9. I've got 2019. And if I choose month to date, I look at all the month to date numbers. If I go year to date, this gives me period 1 through period 9 added together. So my year to date through September. Excellent. Go ahead, save your report. Always good to do. And now what we want to do is we want to actually start making this look more like a report. So we want to organize the report. We want to change the layout. So if you'd like, you can just jump up to L4 and then you can start with kind of this clean look with me, or keep building from the report that you're currently on. And let's start working on cleaning up this report. The first thing we want to do on our report is we want to add a report title. So I'm going to add the report title in the top left-hand corner. It's a preference thing that I like. So I need to make some room. So I'm just going to resize the table. So focus on the table, and I'm just going to drag it down and give myself about an inch up on the top, a little more than an inch. And I'm going to put the title up here. Now, a title is not actually a visualization type within Power BI. It's simply a text box, a Microsoft text box. So I'm going to go up to the menu, the little gray menu bar on the top of the canvas. And I'm going to choose the text box icon. And then when I click inside that, I can start typing. So I'm just going to call this Sales Analysis Report. And this is just a Microsoft box, guys. Don't make it harder than it is. I'm going to highlight that, and I could then, you'll notice when you highlight, you get kind of the, what do you want your font to be? I like that to be the Seago Bold. And I typically go with a size of an 18 for my titles. And then I kind of resize that to take up less space. And then what we're going to do is, again, I'm going to click on the 3 dots, the ellipsis, and I'm just going to drag and drop that up to the left corner of the report. So now I have my title, and it's the very top thing in the top left corner. Again, it was just a text box. You can pick your favorite font, pick your favorite size. I went with the Seago Bold 18, but do what makes sense. Now what we want to do is we want to reposition the slicers and put those at the top of the page as well. So the first slicer that we're going to do is this selected time calc. So I'm just going to drag and drop that up to the top of my page. I can resize this. Depending on how wide you make it, you'll notice that the title will go away. We could also turn that title on and off. I'm going to drag this. I'm going to make it as small as I can make it without having it do any of the wrapping. So you'll notice I don't have any arrows, but I see all of them. Year to date brings me up through whatever period I have. A year total says everything for the entire year. So like right now, if I were to choose, period 7 in 2022, it just shows me up through July. But if I had any future bookings or I had posted anything, with an August date on it, that would show up in like a year total. I also like year totals when I look at budgets so that I get the entire year budget, but I see, what's been against that budget up to today. So that's where year total usually comes into play, more financial reporting when I'm looking at budgets. Next, what I want to do is take my year and do the same thing. So I'm just going to go ahead and drag that up to the top and resize this visual. Again, I've only got 3 years. I don't want users to have to scroll. So I make it just big enough to show the 3 years. And then I like to line things up. The nice thing, you have those red line indicators, and those just help you to get your items lined up. And then finally, let's do the same thing with period. So I'm going to have period across the top, my period numbers. And then I try to line them up with everything else. This does follow kind of that 80-20 rule, 20% of your time getting the data you want, 80% of the time making it look the way you want it to look, right? It's just like every other reporting tool out there. If you have any sort of OCD, it's gonna make you crazy. Welcome to my world. Try to get everything lined up as best I can. And there we go. Perfect. When you're in the desktop application, there's additional functionality that we don't have here in the Power BI service, such as like distribute vertically or distribute horizontally, things that you might be used to using if you do a lot of like PowerPoint development. You do have those tools available in the desktop application, but not here in the service. So here in the service, we're limited just a little bit. Perfect. Again, we could also, rename things if we want. We already saw how we'd rename pages just by doing the right click, but we have the report set up. So now we're just going to go ahead and hit save. So now we basically have our layout and the report looking the way we want it to look. Now let's go ahead and jump in and let's start creating those visualizations. So what I want to do for the visualizations is I want to start creating the pictures of my data. The very first visualization I want to create a sales variance, to see my sales variance by sales rep. So this is going to be a waterfall chart. So the waterfall charts are really good at showing, the variances between values and then how that affects the total number in the end. So what we're going to do here, again, if you've gotten lost or you've fallen behind, go ahead and just click on your L5 to build our first visual. Or you can keep building from the page you're on, either way. But what we want to do is create a new visual with this sales variance. So we are going to take our visual and let's just copy the table. So focus on it, do your Control C and your Control V. I'm going to drag it down here to the bottom a little bit. So they're not on top of each other. And I'm going to change this visual type. And I want to create the, what do I want to do? I want to add the sales rep to this. So right now I'm looking at this by customer name. Let's go ahead and add the sales rep. So let's navigate up to the customer table. Find the sales rep field and just put that right above customer name in the table. So now I'm looking at the data by sales rep. Again, we could drill down in this table. If I just right click on Andrew Short and I go to drill down, I'm looking now at who are Andrew's customers. I could drill back up by doing the drill up. So that was just, we saw that at the beginning. We saw that, previously where we can add those different fields for the drill down. So here we're looking by sales rep, and then we see by customer. Now what we want to do is we want to switch this over to be the waterfall chart. But again, we said the waterfall chart is best for looking at the variances. So we have the variance in there, right? We have that variance sales amount by prior year. This is what we ultimately want to see. Our choice is, do we want to get rid of the other fields, or do we want those to be available for the tooltips or the pop-up? I want it available for the tooltips. So the first thing I'm going to do is just change the visual type. So I get an option down here for tooltips. So let's change this to the waterfall chart. That chart, the icon looks almost like an H. It's next to the blue funnel icon. So if you hover, it says waterfall chart. I'm just going to change that. And now you'll notice it defaults, it puts things where it thinks you want it to go. So it's showing my sales amount, but we said, I don't want sales amount, I want the variance. So I'm going to take sales amount and drag that down to the tooltips field well. And I'm going to take the variance and drag it up. The order that we see these in kind of the tooltips is the order they're going to appear to the user when they hover. So I went ahead and just changed my y-axis to be the variance amount, the sales amount by PY. And I took the sales amount and put that down in the tooltips. So I just swapped those two fields. And now we have our waterfall chart. Now, if yours is sorting in a different order, you can adjust the sort order here. So if I click on the more options, the ellipsis in the top right corner of the visual, there's an option for sort axis. And I want to make sure I'm sorting by sales amount versus PY selected. And I'm going in descending value. Depending on your button clicks and the order of how you got here, it may default to other fields. So all you do is go to sort axis, click on sales amount by PY selected, and that will make sure you're sorting in that order. And then you want to make sure that you're sorting in descending order. So now as I'm looking at my sales, if I look at David Williams and I see, wow, his sales are down, I could right click on this value and go drill down, and I can say what customers are causing his sales to be lower this year. Well, I can see he's doing better with like Sears and Listen Up and Home Depot, but man, what's going on with the airport appliance, right? They've dropped quite a bit. Oh, well, they went out of business, right? So they're not buying anything this year. So they're 100% down. Well, that makes sense. But maybe Walmart, why is he not selling as much? I know Walmart didn't go out of business. Like, what's going on there? Maybe we can start looking at that specific customer and find out why we're not selling as much to that customer. To drill back up, I just right click and choose drill up. So this allows my users to be more self-serving. They can get to their answers. This looks really good. I want this title to be more helpful. So what we're going to do is change the title. Again, we created the visual in the visualizations pane. Everything about the definition is in kind of this first icon. Now, what does the visual look like? We're going to go to the format section. So with your waterfall chart selected, click on the formatting icon in the visualizations pane. And let's go ahead and format the title for this visual. So we're going to go to the general section under title, and the text is what's going to appear. This is going to be static, so we want to make sure it makes sense. So what I'm going to call this is sales variance by sales rep. Okay, I don't need all these extra words in there. So there's a lot of stuff in there. I'm just going to leave. You can delete everything out and just type it in. I'm a bad typer, so sales variance by sales rep. You'll notice, yeah, what font do you want, what heading do you want to use? You can use one of the default heading types. We could override it if we want. So I might say that I want this to be a bold font. I want the text color for that font to be black so that it really stands out, or maybe I want it to be a dark gray. Do I want a background? What's your alignment? Left, center, right? I like it left because these icons always come up in the right. So if it's centered or if it's right justified, those come up over the top of the title. So I tend to go to the left, but that's just a preference. Totally up to you on how you do that. Excellent. And now I could shrink this down just a little bit, drag it up here to my top row. And now I have my waterfall chart. Perfect. We're going to go ahead and save the report. How's everybody doing? How's my pace? Let me know, or let Adam know in the text box if you feel like I'm going too fast or not fast enough. But
Michelle?
Yes.
Yeah, actually, as mentioned, yeah, feel free to post questions in the box about pace. I'm wondering if now is a good time just for take a 5-minute bio break or so. Do you want 5 or 10 minutes? What your preference?
You're such a softie.
I know.
Yes, let's go ahead. We'll take 5, 6, 7 minutes, 6 minutes now. We'll start back up at 10:55 on my clock. So
Mountain
if you can
time.
see my mountain time, if you see my little clock in the bottom, but we'll start back up in about 5 minutes.
Awesome. Thanks, Michelle.
You're welcome. We are going to go ahead and keep moving forward. So all we're going to do, again, you can keep building from where you're at, or you can click on that L6 if you want to start at the same place I am. And we are going to add the next visualization type. So the next visualization type that we have is going to be a scatter chart. So the scatter chart's a great way for analyzing dimensional data and seeing the correlations between two different measures. So for all the other visuals really kind of keep us in a single measure analysis, but this is going to let us see, two different measures and how they correlate to each other. So what we're going to look at here is we're going to look at, in our scatter chart, our sales amount and how does that compare to the gross profit percent. So for our different customers or for our different product groups, what would that look like? So let's go ahead and I am going to just copy my scatter chart and paste that in the bottom left-hand corner. So again, I'm just going to highlight it, Control-C, Control-V, and drag that down here to the bottom left-hand corner and create a scatter chart. So once you have that visualization copied, let's go ahead and change it from waterfall over to scatter. The scatter looks almost like a little UPC code in the visualization icons. So just go ahead and click on that little one that has little dots everywhere. It's 2 over from the waterfall chart also. And what you're going to see here is just a single line of dots. So our visual changed, and that's because in our scatter chart, we currently are only defining one dimension of the data. So we need to see, we have our sales amounts going kind of across, but what we want to see is how does this sales amount correlate to the gross profit percent? So let's go ahead and let's just add that. Also, we're looking at the variance, and I don't want to see the variance. I want to actually compare it to the sales amount. So take the variance amount that defaulted up here in the x-axis and drag that down to the tooltips. And take sales amount and put that up in the x-axis. And again, now if you hover over, you're going to see your sales, you're going to see your prior year, you're going to see the variance and the variance percent. But we only are charting the current sales amount. So copy your waterfall chart, change the chart type to a scatter chart. It's one that looks like the UPC code, and then change what's being represented from the variance back over to just the sales amount by swapping those two fields from the tools tip up to the x-axis. Now what we want to do is add the y-axis. So that's where we're going to put the gross profit percent. So if you remember the gross profit percent, we don't have it anywhere in our definition, so we need to go pull it from the table. So we're going to navigate over in the fields well to the sales table. And in the sales table, navigate down to the gross profit percent, the gross profit subfolder. And now we want to find the gross profit percent selected. So it's kind of in the middle of the list. And add that as your y-axis. So now I can see here that the item that has the highest gross profit, we also sold the least of, right? If we want to really, slingshot our sales forward, what we need to do is take whatever this item is and start selling a lot more of it because our gross profit is so high on that item. So, that's what this chart is telling us. Now, the other thing we can do on this, there's some other things we can do to make it look kind of cooler, is if we can change the size of these dots so that helps to represent or show that how much that gross profit represents. So what we're going to do is take the gross profit selected. This is actually the amount. So gross profit selected, and I'm going to add that right here in the field well for size. So I just did a drag and drop in there. So now you can see that the size has changed as well. So what was the total gross profit? Not just the percentage of it, but what's the total gross profit? And we can see which ones make the highest, which one make the lowest. Now this is showing by sales rep, but instead of looking at this by sales rep, I want to analyze this by channel. So what I want to do is remove the sales rep and add the channel from the customer table. So I'm going to expand the customer table. I'm going to take channel and I'm just going to add that right to the top. I just use drag and drop, and then I'm going to get rid of sales rep. Oh, wait, you know what? That was actually, instead of having channel represented here, we want to actually do it as a legend. So I'm going to take that channel and I'm going to drag and drop it down here to the legend. What the legend does, now I'm seeing each of my customers, and I'm seeing, are they buying online? Are they buying retail? Is it other, right? And how are they doing? So I've got my values as just my customer name. And I've got down here for those customers, how are they purchasing the products? So take the channel and put it here in the legend. For our drill hierarchy, right? Customer name, we're like jumping right into the details. We want to start at a little bit of a higher level. So what we want to do is we want to actually look at this first by the product group and then the subgroup. So I'm going to go down to the item branch table. I'm going to find that product group and I'm going to add that in my values field well right above customer name. And then I'm going to take subgroup and add it right between. So now I've created kind of this drill hierarchy. So I'm looking here at product group. I'm looking at the TV and home theater. This is my retail sales, how are we doing? If I right click on that, I could drill down and I could see for that TV and home theater, what are the individual subgroups for that. So I'm looking at this. This is showing me my subgroups. And then I could drill down from here and I could see who are my actual customers within that subgroup. Okay, so you don't have to start at the very end. Again, use the arrows to drill back up to the top and see this at the highest level. Now we can do some stuff with the formatting of this. We can make it look a little bit different. So let's go ahead and go over to the formatting section. What I want to do here is I want to go ahead and turn on my category labels. So on the visuals section, on the visuals area under category label, if I turn that on, now it's going to put in what are those different, what are the different product groups. So I don't have to take up space in, in a legend, or I don't need to hover to see it, but now I can just see it on the screen. Again, this looks really nice with, when I have limited data. If I was looking at this by customer, it kind of blows it right out of the water. It gets really detailed. We also want to change the title. So let's go ahead and navigate to the general section right underneath our title. And let's change the title of this and call it Sales and Gross Profit Percent by Customer. And again, since I did a copy and a paste, it already has all the formatting for what the title should look like, what color the font should be, what size, all that's already set. So that's really, really helpful and a great advantage of doing that. Perfect. And then we're just going to save. So we've now created two visuals, or three visuals, I guess, a table. We have our waterfall chart and we have our scatter chart to show our data. The next visual that we want to create is we are going to create a stacked bar chart. And in our stacked bar chart, what we want to look at, what's our gross profit by product group and also by region. So down here, we're looking at it by channel. We want to create something that's going to show it to us by region. So we're going to show that using the stacked bar chart. Let's go ahead and take that scatter chart and we're just going to copy it. You can go ahead, if you got lost, the scatter chart, I know there's a lot of button clicks, a lot of things to move. You could start with me on L7. Oh, and it looks like my scatter chart's a little bit different in L7. Oh, it did leave customer name in there. So if you're sticking with the one you've been building on your scatter chart, go ahead and put customer name above product group. Right now I have it at the bottom. Just resort that. And then you'll be right where we're at for L7. So if you got lost, just start on L7. Pick up with us. Perfect. Now let's create the stacked bar chart. So let's take our scatter chart, copy and paste it, Control C, Control V. I'm just going to drag it over here. And then we're going to change this. So all we're going to do is, now that we have our chart there, let's go ahead and change the chart type to a stacked bar chart. It's on the top row and it's about the third, oh gosh, where are we at? First one, it's the very first one. I wanted it to be like third or fourth, but it wasn't. I was making it too difficult. So go ahead and choose the option for the stacked bar chart. Then what we want to do is we want to set up the different fields for it. So how are we going to define this visual? So in our stacked bar chart, our axis, we're going to look at this by product group and subgroup. We don't want the customer name anymore. So let's just remove that altogether. So I'm just going to click on that X to remove that. And I see my product group. This is breaking into multiple sections. That's what they call the small group, the small multiplies. So by channel, I see each of these represented separately. I don't want to see it broken out by channel. So let's go ahead and just remove channel as well. So I've got my product group, my subgroup. In my, what amount do I want to see charted in here? So let's see. I feel like I didn't, sorry. We don't need to see the gross profit percent in here. So let's go ahead and get rid of that. And I'm going to get rid of my sales amount selected. So I'm just going to leave the gross profit selected as my x-axis. That's the amount I want to see. Now, so what I'm seeing now is by product group, what is my gross profit within each product group? But I want to see, how does this break out by region? So that's going to be my legend. So we're going to navigate to where our region is at. So the region is going to be in that customer folder. So just scroll back up there and find region, and you're going to add that as the legend. So just drag that over to the legend and drop it in. And now we see our gross profit broken out by region, by product group. Perfect. A couple other things we can do in here. If we go to the formatting section, we can turn on data labels here. That's just going to put the amounts right in there inside the visual. For those data labels, if you want, you could play with, how it's displaying those labels under the values. How many decimal places, what's the units that it's showing in? It's showing it in millions. If we feel like our numbers aren't large enough to show in millions, we could change that. Again, I usually I try to leave things as often as I can to whatever the default is, just so it will automatically adjust as the values change. But again, up to you on how you're doing this or what you're setting up. Let's go ahead and look at the general option, and let's update our title. So for our title on this stacked bar chart, let's make this gross profit by product group and region. Gross profit by. And then when I click off, I don't know if any of you guys have had the same experience I do. It will tell you when you've spelled something wrong. It gives you the red underline, but it doesn't give you any options to spell it right. Like, I need my spell check here. I need that right click and pick the right word. So perfect. So now we've got our bar chart. Let's go ahead and hit our save. And now we need to create a little bit more room. So let's go ahead and take our table and let's just delete the table off the report. So I just focus on that table, hit the delete option on your keyboard, or if you focus on the visual and you go to the ellipsis, the 3 dots, there's an option to remove, and that will delete the visual. So let's remove that table so that we have some extra room in here. And the next thing we want to create is we want to create a couple KPIs. So the KPIs are going to allow us to take a value and compare it to another value, and it's going to show us, are we up or are we down for that value? So it gives it a quick and easy way to evaluate two numbers or compare them to each other. So I'm just going to click in my white space over here, and what we want to do is go ahead and find our sales amount selected. So in our sales table, let's go down to sales amount selected, and I just check that box and it adds it. Remember the default, it always adds it as a column. We want to change this to a KPI. So in my visualizations pane, I'm going to find that icon that's just that little up and down indicator. Right, it's got a little green arrow going up and a red arrow going down. I click on that and that changes it to a KPI. I've got my value as my sales amount selected, but I need to compare it to something. What I'm comparing it to is what we put in here called the trend. So I'm going to take the prior year sales amount. So right below it, it says sales amount selected PY, and I'm going to drag that up here and put that in the trend. And then for my trend axis, I want to compare this by year. So I'm going to go to the calendar table, and I'm going to go down to fiscal, and I'm going to find year. And I'm going to add that as the trend axis. So I've created a KPI. I just added the visual type, the value, the sales amount selected. I'm comparing it to the prior year sales amount selected, and I'm doing that on the trend axis of the year. And we can see for period 9 of 2019 and my year-to-date values, I'm actually up by 2.12%, 2.12%. You'll notice that my color is just green. That's saying that I'm better or I'm higher than I was previously, so that's a good thing. We want to do a little bit of formatting on this. So let's go ahead and let's add our title. So we're going to go to the formatting icon, and I'm going to go over to my general and on my title, and I'm just going to change this and say sales versus prior year. I'm going to resize this visual or my little KPI here. I'm just going to put it right underneath my title. Excellent. Let's go ahead, let's add the next one. So the next one, I want to actually do the gross profit percent. So I want to do the same steps, but I want it to be the gross profit percent. So you can either do a copy and paste or you can add from scratch. I'm going to do a copy paste because I like to be efficient. And I'm just going to change out those values, guys. So you can feel free to do this on your own. The only things that are going to change are my value and my trend. So I'm going to change those out. But this time I'm going to find that gross profit percent selected. Put that in my value. And you do have to actually remove the first value before you can add the second. It doesn't allow you to do that. And then don't forget to change the title. Nothing's worse than having the wrong title. So this shows me that my sales numbers are up, but the gross profit's actually down. So that means we're selling a lot more dollar-wise, but we're not making as much money. So again, now we start looking at some of those other visuals. Which products do we make more money on? Which ones improve our gross profit? Maybe we start focusing on that, or we make some campaigns around those items. Right? How can these visuals help your business? How can they quickly identify issues? If we were just looking at the sales amount, we might have thought we were doing really well because we're selling more this year than we did last year, right? So we don't want that to be like a false positive. Perfect. Go ahead and save your report. Okay. The next thing we want to do then is we want to add our last visual type. We want to add on here a trend chart. So for that trend chart, I'm going to go ahead and navigate myself all the way up to L9. If you got lost, again, you can keep working on the one you've been on, or you can go to L9. And we are going to add the trend chart. We're going to put the trend chart down here in the bottom right-hand corner. So for the trend chart, let's go ahead, this is actually going to be an area chart as the visual, but it's going to show our trend. So if we just click in there, we can add that area chart. It's the one up here that looks kind of like a mountain range. So if you click on the icon that looks like a mountain range, it's going to put that visual down here. I can just drag it so it takes up all the space, make it a little bigger. And I use my lines to get my everything set up. And then we want to start defining it. So what we want to do is we want to look across the bottom. I want to see my different periods. And then what I want to chart is actually my variance, right? My sales amount versus the prior year. So let's go ahead and start defining this. To get my periods, we're going to navigate up to the calendar table. And I am going to find that period number and just put that in as my x-axis. So I'm going to see everything by period number going across. Or we could do this by the period description short. Again, it's up to who's your user, how are they using it, right? What language do they speak? What do we want to chart? We're going to go down to our sales table. And in here, we're going to find that sales amount. And I'm going to locate my variance. So sales amount versus prior year selected. And I'm going to make that my value or my y-axis. And then what do I want to see? I want to see this actually broken out by the channel. So again, is it online? Is it retail? So let's go ahead and navigate up to the customer table. I know I have you guys bouncing around all over the place. And let's find channel and put the channel in the legend. So I just like to drag and drop it over so that it goes where I want it to go. So now I have my 3 lines here. Perfect. Are you guys doing okay? So this is great, but this is only showing me the values for one period. And that's because of how these visuals interact with the slicers. So if I were to change this right now, I'm looking at period 9. If I went over here and I clicked on a 4, I would see that this changes and I'm seeing everything charted for period 4 or April, right? If I come to 6, I'm seeing everything for June and I see it mapped here for June. But on this, and this works great for those other 5 visuals that we've created. But for this visual, I wanted it to be a trend chart. I want to see all 12 periods, all 12 months. So I don't want this slicer up here to affect the results in this visual. So what we have to do is what they call edit the interactions with the visual. So what you're going to do to edit the interactions with the visual is we're going to take our visual and highlight the slicer. Need to break them up. And then we're going to come up here on the top and it says there's an option that says visual interactions. And then it says edit interactions. You're just going to toggle this feature on. So highlight the period slicer, go to visual interactions and edit interactions. And now what you see is every visual on the page has 2 icons in the top right corner. The first one's a little filter icon. It says this, what you have selected is going to filter or limit the results in this visual. The other one is a Ghostbuster sign and it says it's not going to affect it. So what we want to do is we want to disassociate or break the relationship between that slicer and that visual. So click on the little none icon. And now you'll see all 12 periods going across the bottom. Once you've done that, then you can come up to your visual interactions and toggle the edit interactions back off. So now it doesn't matter which period slicer you choose, you will always see all 12 months for that visual on the bottom of the page. Now there's all kinds of fun things we can do with this visual. So let's go ahead and go down, highlight your trend chart now. And let's go ahead and do some of the formatting on here. So let's go to the format section of the visualizations pane. And the first one I want to look at, we have data labels. And they're off. We could turn those on and you see the amounts. I think the amounts make it kind of busy and kind of hard to see. So I don't like those on. So I actually will go ahead and turn those off, but I just wanted to show you so you could see where you could turn those on or off. I actually like the one right above it, the markers. So the markers are just going to put the dots at each specific period. So it just makes it kind of breaks that line up a little bit, makes it a little easier to analyze. If you expand that section, you can see here that you could change the type of indicator that you have. Do you want dots, squares, triangles, diamonds, right? What size do you want it? What color do you want them? Right now there's no color, so it makes it the same color as the line, but you could make them a standard color if you'd like. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on my show markers so I can see that. Let's go ahead and update the title. So we're going to go to the general section and expand the title. And let's change the title on this and just call it sales variance by period and channel. Perfect. Again, whatever color you want. My font is this light gray. I change my mind. I go, I want that black. I could just change that to be black. I could change that the type to be 10, right? I could make it Seago bold, right? So you can make some of those changes. Or I can reset it to the default. So it's up to you guys. Again, I like Seago bold and 9. Hopefully I'm buying some of you enough time to get this all set up as I play around here. Okay, so now I've got my sales by period, number, and channel. Perfect. So now what we want to look at, we've created our report. Let's go ahead and hit save. In our report, what we want to do next is we've created visuals, right? We've created a page. It has lots of visuals on it. We've created the drill down. We've given the user the ability to self-service a little bit by looking at any of these pictures and saying, what's the next level of detail? I'm looking at my product subgroups, but I want to see what are the actual items, or I want to see who are the customers that are buying in this product group. So we've built in that drill down. The drill through is where it takes us from one page of the report over to another page. So basically this would take us from this picture over to those transaction details. So if you remember, the very first thing we did is we created a page called transactions. Let me have you just go ahead and click on transactions. And it will bring you back to that very first page that we created, right? We're going all the way back to where we started. In this page, we want to have the users go from one of our visuals over to this page based on certain parameters or criteria. So what we have here in the visualizations pane, down here at the bottom, it says drill through. What this does is as soon as we start adding fields in this section, those are going to be the values that pass, and it will turn on or trigger this functionality for us. Okay, so this is built into Power BI. There's not a lot we have to do other than tell it what fields do we want. So all we're going to do is start finding some of those fields that we want for our drill through functionality. So let's go find in the customer field, let's take that channel, and I'm just going to drag and drop that right here in the drill through field. And I'm not going to select anything. I'm just going to shrink it back up. And then I've got channel. I'm going to find that customer name. I'll drag and drop that over. And then I think we had sales rep in there. So any one of these items, if any of our visuals have one of those 3 items in it, we will be able to use the drill through functionality. Let's go down and let's look at the item branch. And I think we had a couple in here. We had the product group and the subgroup. So I'm just going to drag and drop those in here as drill through fields. And then the final ones that I want to add are going to be from the, I guess we don't have a lot from the sales table as far as dimensions. So I think we're good there. Once I've added those fields, Now that creates a link. You'll notice up here in the top left-hand corner, we now have an arrow. That means if a user drills to this page, right, using the drill through, this button will take them back to the report they came from, okay, or from the page they came from. So I'm just going to go back to my report that we just built in class. On mine, I happen to be on L10 is the page. Now, if I go on any one of my visuals and I right click and I go to drill through, I now see my transaction page sitting here. That is because I identified the product group as a value to pass through. So whenever I choose that, it's going to pass over that product group. And you can see right here in the filters that product group now becomes one of the filter fields, right? It's populated that. It's also populated in the period, the year to date, the year, or yeah, period, year to date value, the year, and the central region. And that's because of this button right here that says keep all filters. So it says what were all the filters that were set on your first page, plus whatever value you happen to be right clicking on. And it passes those over as filter parameters to our details page to help focus us in on the specific transactions that make up that value we're seeing in the picture. That's what they call drill through functionality. Again, all of the coding, everything's already built in there. All we have to do is say which fields are going to be passed, which parameters get passed when we do that. You'll notice on our report, it also went to sales detail. That was already built in our sample. So we had some drill through fields already set up there just to make sure that we had that. Excellent. So now we have this amazing report that we just built. We want to start sharing it with our users. What are we going to do to get it out to the users? We ask a few questions when we do that. One of the questions that we ask is, which workspace would that user be on? So we can see here, we have a single workspace that was set up for this session called 2022 Workshop. If you think of workspaces, think about what you need to do your job. And create those workspaces based on who are the users, what are the security, who do you want to limit access to those reports. I've seen workspaces like an executive summary workspace or executive overview, financials, operations. They could be based on job function or even department, either one of those. And as we build our report, we publish it out to the appropriate workspace. When our users log in, they then what we do is go to that workspace and we create an app over the workspace. So for our workspace, when I look at that, I need to save changes. Make sure to save your changes. When I look at our workspace, I've got all of these reports. I would create an app and then I publish the app to my users. Okay? I just give them permissions to the app. That's how they log in and look at the content. So a couple different steps that we go through there. But again, create the workspaces on how you want to share these reports that you've built. But then we ask ourselves, how are those users going to run the report? Now, typically, if I'm looking at like my financial users, I'm looking at anybody in the financial area, they're going to be in an office building. They're going to be looking at it from their computer. They're going to have some big monitors like you have in front of you. But if I'm looking at this is a sales report and I'm thinking of my sales managers or my sales reps that are out in the field, they might not always have a big computer in front of them. Most of the time they have their phones, right? Those salespeople live on their phones. So what I want to do is back in your report, make sure you're back there. I want to take this report that we just created and I want to set this up so that my sales rep can use their mobile device. All I have to do is in the report where you've created your report, there's an option up here called mobile layout. You will set up a mobile layout for each page of the report. And all that means is when the sales rep logs in, it looks at what type of device they're using to access the report. Are they using a mobile device or are they logging in from a desktop machine or a laptop? And that's what determines which view they show. So if I'm logging in from my laptop right here at my desk, I'm going to see this view. If I go to mobile layout, it gives me like a little cell phone here, little cell phone look, looks kind of like my iPhone. And now I see over on the right-hand side all the different visuals that we created. So I can take this title and put it up here on the top and have it go across. And then I can take, what are the visuals that really work? Do I want the user to be able to select a year? Do I want them to select a period, right? And I can put these in here and just kind of go across the page for them. I can resize them so that it's easy for their fingers to select the right item. You know, do I want them to be able to choose month to date, quarter to date, year to date, or do I just want it to always default in? Which visuals work really well? When it comes to mobile device, things like those KPIs, those are really nice. They just kind of show the number. It's really easy to read. You know, so I want to do that one. And maybe I want to also add here, I can scroll down just a little bit on a page on a mobile device. We can scroll. I might add here my trend chart. You know, not necessarily that they're going to look at the numbers, but they can look at the line. Is it directionally correct, right? Maybe I could have out here an item for the customer. What's their outstanding balance? Are they a credit hold, right? How much can we sell to them? So as you're walking in to have that meeting with the customer, you have all of that information right there at your fingertips. So there I have that. I don't have to use all the visuals. I just use the ones that look really good or render well on a cell phone. Scatter charts, not so great. There's too much information. It's too much detail. So I'm just going to leave that one off. And now I have that. If I hit the web layout, it just takes me back. I'm just toggling between the two layouts. I'm not saving something special. I don't have to save a whole new report. It's just another element of the report that we have. So if I click save, that view is going to be saved as well. So now as my salesperson logs in, if they're using their mobile device, they open the Power BI app and they look, that's what they would see. Awesome. Any questions, guys? We just went through and we built our first Power BI report. And we have it sitting out here in the Power BI service. And we even created the mobile app layout. And I did it all in like 2 hours, which is amazing, if you know me. So
I think that is record time on that,
I think
Michelle.
it is too. Yes.
So, yeah, like as I mentioned before, we are recording this session. We'll put it out there and have a link available on our website. We can share with you if you want, and we can kind of keep these reports out there for a couple weeks in case you want to come back in and tinker. And also, if there's anybody else in your organization that you would want to give access, just let us know. We can kind of set up another report for them as well, and they can walk through the video. So, Michelle, is there anything else then? I mean, we still have to pick a winner. Is there anything else that you want to tackle before we announce our
No, I
$50
think that's great. Are there any questions or anything that you guys saw or want to know more about? I think I'm good then.
Okay. Well, good news is the group that's on now at the end have been on for a while, so either hopefully they're all still here. But to pick a random winner, we need to kind of put the names in a hat, right? And I'd let somebody pick here, but unfortunately it's just me in my office. Okay, so our winner, Raul Sanchez. So Raul, we need you to confirm that you're actually here. Can you send a little question or chat or something? Oh. Well, all right, let me go ahead and we'll pick another one. Can you guys, someone send a question just to make sure that it's working? Can someone log a question or chat?
And you guys can come off mute as well. I think you guys are all on mute, but if you want, you could just come off mute. Oh, I see Nikki's here.
I'm seeing people there. Okay, got it. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and pick. We have a Rich Andow. Rich, let us know you're there. Did anybody see anything from Rich? All right, we'll keep going. Stay on the line. Chances of getting better, you're gonna win.
They're probably like me, where they're like trying to fall over themselves, falling out of their chair, trying to find that mute button or something. But
All right. Someone said, can you condition the color on the marker?
yeah, we'll get the prize done, and then I'll come back to your question there, William.
Okay. How about a Carrie McKee? Do we have a Carrie McKee online?
We do,
Yep,
because she
yeah, we
tested.
do. She just said, okay, great. All right, so Carrie, congratulations. We will get the gift card to you, but we do have some questions that came up. So before we log off, do you want to kind of touch on those?
I will, yeah. Brian, you're cracking me up. It's like the Price is Right. Okay, yes, so the question came up about, can you condition the colors on the markers? So I think if we go back here and we're looking in the formatting section, let's see, in the markers, here we had the color, and you're wanting to do more of a condition of which color is on that marker. And I want to go with yes, under conditional formatting. Is that the right answer, Adam?
Well, I think if you were, I mean, just go back to where you were a second ago, a bit where the marker that had the color. If you go in and change that at the bottom, make it just a different, totally different random color, does it change it? Or you're saying,
but
that's
you're
on
wanting those
all of them by default.
Oh, yes, wait, apply to.
There you go.
So I could say I want online to be black, or I want online to be black. I could go to other, and I could change that one to be the green.
Yeah.
And then I could go to retail and make that one pink. So you can do it right here with the series. You could change it. Your question had the word condition in there, make it like conditional on something else. I don't see that functionality on this particular visual. There is the ability to do conditional formatting. That's a little bit easier to show here, like on transactions. So if I'm looking at the sales amount field, I could right click on that and go down here to conditional formatting and put some conditioning here. Again, you can do this on visuals as well. It's just easiest to show it here from the table, where I could say font color. I could either do the background or the font color. I could make it just based on whatever the values are, the lowest to the highest range, it's going to put it in one of these colors, or I could say a rule. If it is greater than 5,000, and I'm going to make that a number, I could make it the percentage of the number, but I'm going to say the number, or less than 1 million, I want the number to be red, and I could do an OK here, and then it's just going to apply that. So now for my sales amount field, looking at the values, it would apply that number. I could put in as many rules as I want with different colors. So I could do that here, not quite the same as I was doing on that chart, but you do have that ability to do that conditional formatting here. There are a couple other kind of cool conditional like formatting options on this table. Just because I went so fast, I have time. I'm going to just keep talking. You guys can tell me you're done. Tell me to just stop. Here, I like this one, the bars. It will actually it makes it almost look like a bar chart for your values. So in my sales amount, it fills them in with the bars. I can have the bars only, or I can have the bar and the amount. Again, it's just how you're set, what you're choosing for your options. But there is the ability to put conditional formatting on your visuals. The visual I happen to click or select didn't have it, but each visual has different options available within it. So hopefully I answered that question. I see that based on the threshold below different colors. Again, yes, depends on the visual type, William.
So another question just came up. Do we have access to the data model? Here I'm trying to understand the relationships of JD tables and fields. So one of the things that we have, which is based on the same data set that we're using for today's workshop, but we also have what's called a free trial. And in essence, that's the full data model, not just sales, but it also have the other like general ledger, AP, AR, sales, inventory, procurement, manufacturing, assets, work orders, so it's got all the different subject areas in the one model. And we can spin up with a dedicated credentials for you for a couple weeks to use. So I I know who just asked that. I'll follow up. But if anybody else wants us to basically set up a trial account for you, you have access to like I said, the full-fledged model. You can connect from Power BI. We can kind of do a couple walkthroughs to make sure you understand how to get in there. You can also connect to the model from Excel if you want as well. So if that's of interest, reach out to us and let us know. And we do also have what's called a QuickLaunch test drive, where it does have a fee that you get credit back if you move forward after the end of the test drive. But the test drive is really, we take you know, some of your data around GL or sales and bring it into an environment. So you're actually kind of doing what you just did today, or looking at the analysis over your own data. And so we can talk about that as well. So if you are trying to, this piqued your interest of this workshop today, and you want to, you know, how can you take this to the next level? Those are two great avenues to explore together. So again, reach out to us or just send, well, I'm sure you get an email from us, Paul, but there is also, I think, a survey that might pop up about kind of just getting your feedback and kind of get a sense of how you felt you did during the session and how we did. And so when you get that survey, please, you know, that's good feedback for us. So thanks again, everybody, so much for taking your time today. I know this is a big commitment to spend this much time. Michelle, thank you so much for walking everybody through that and making it an enjoyable workshop for everyone. And Ben and David, thanks for helping out, responding to questions. So you all have a great rest of your week, and thank you again, and we'll look forward to catching you on the next one. Thank you, Michelle.
Bye, thank you.